Welcome to Behind the Tools. Here's Tradify CEO and your host, Michael Steckler.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Behind the Tools. Now, despite their talent for the trades, tradeswomen make up just under 5% of the global industry. Now, that's a figure that's barely changed over the last decade, and so there's still huge room for improvement when it comes to diversity and inclusion within the trades industry. And we want to be part of driving this change. So for this month, we'll be talking to a number of hardworking women from all over the world to find out the great work they're doing, but also to get more insight into their journey and ways they're working to push for a more inclusive industry. Enjoy the episode and happy Women in Trades Month. Yep. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Behind the Tools with me, Michael from Tradify. And it's Women in Trades Month this month with Tradify on the podcast. I'm delighted that we've got Sophie Maguire, who's a commercial plumbing apprentice based in the UK. Sophie, welcome to the show.
Hiya, how are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. And I see you've got your branded hoodie on today as well, which I know you have on your Instagram account. Maybe to start with, do you want to just tell everyone sort of what you're up to at the moment and how you got into the trades?
Yeah, so at the moment I am a year and a half into my 4-year apprenticeship. And yeah, at the moment I've been working in a lot of iconic buildings throughout near where I live. So I've been working in castles, been working in this pavilion on the seafront, and just loads of different factories really.
Fantastic. And you're the first apprentice we've had on board, so it'd be great to sort of understand and hear about your experience. Would be really useful for probably a lot of trades companies that listen and watch this and are thinking about, maybe getting their first apprentice. What got you into the trades? Why did you pick a career in the trades?
Yeah, so in school, my school, thankfully, before we left, they did a construction course for 2 years. So I did that instead of one of my final exams. And I just really enjoyed it. We got to have a go at everything from site management to bricklaying, tiling, carpentry. And actually the one thing we didn't try was plumbing. But I did really enjoy it because it gave you such a good aspect of that you didn't have to do academic things and go to colleges and university, but actually I really enjoyed doing something practical because I'm not a very academic person.
Fantastic, great. And so with that in mind, what made you decide to be a plumber?
I applied during COVID, so apprenticeships were really hard to get over here. Yeah. And I ended up applying for over 50 different apprenticeships over all the trades, and plumbing were the only one that got back to me. And actually I've really enjoyed it, and it ended up being plumbing, but it was definitely now something I would pick.
And what was to sort of go back a step, because one of the big things we're seeing worldwide is this sort of shortage of I guess the shortage predominantly has been focused on qualified tradespeople. What do you think was a driver of not having that's sort of in some ways a surprising experience that you've had, that so few people got back to you? What do you think is driving that?
I think it's because not many people are educated in apprenticeships, as in it's almost seen as you do apprenticeships because you didn't do well at school and that you don't really want to do anything else. And it always seems that you do it because your dad's been a plumber or someone else owns a business. And also I think a lot of employers don't know how many grants there is for you to actually take on apprentices. And it's not a very much spoken of subject really.
Yeah, the grant thing's quite interesting. I do think there is probably a lack of I don't think the grant thing has been advertised or socialized into the trades as well as it could have been. And there is a lack of awareness. And is there a general, one of the comments I sometimes get from people that certainly if they've got a smaller team is that there's too much heavy lifting involved in kind of training an apprentice on the job whilst trying to do the job. Is that something you've experienced? Do you think that's a sort of fair comment? Or
yeah, it's something that I know my boss definitely thought about. And it was something I was even asking in my interview, it was something that you have to train for, as in like over time you will be able to lift heavier things, but you just have to be willing to give everything a go. And I think people kind of worried about the fact of taking on a female because I'm not a very big person, and to be honest I couldn't lift as much, but even in the past year what I can now lift is equal to some of the other boys my age. So you do learn, but I think it's people just knowing that you will learn how to lift heavier things, and you'll always find a way. Even if you find something to help roll it, something to help drag it, like there's always a way to move something.
I hadn't even really thought about that. And so is that a real concern that people have? And I was thinking
Definitely,
more
I think,
about, I was thinking more about experience and, not necessarily being able to do the work straight out of the gates, because obviously you're still learning certain things. You're not fully qualified yet. And the level of sort of attention that certainly if you're a sole trader, you might need to give to someone whilst trying to obviously complete the work at the same time.
yeah, so I think it was easier for me because I'm at a bigger company, so they had enough
Yeah.
people to then put me with somebody to learn with. But I think it's definitely someone like sole traders do worry about. But if you just have to be willing to learn really, and making sure you are fully investing yourself into what you're learning, because you will learn it a lot quicker if you get involved. And I think the best thing for employers is just having that little bit of patience, because most
Yeah.
people going into apprenticeships are 16, they've never had a job. I never worked a day in my life until I started my apprenticeship.
Yeah. Cool. And you sort of talked about some of the work you're doing. You work for a larger commercial plumber. What sort of work are you doing?
So I do mainly like commercial boiler houses. So I do a lot of heating that will end up heating up a castle, or I've been doing pipe work to feed like thousands of pounds machines in like food factories. And it's a lot more being on the commercial side. It's a lot of bigger things, like, and I think that was one thing I worried about, because I'm having to move stuff that you're having to get a crane to move, but then you've got to adjust it in the last little bit and things like that.
Yeah. And is there any cool jobs that you've done recently? You sort of talked about castles. Is that a commonplace work for you?
No. So it was actually a renovation project, like one of the only ones happening. It's one of like the top like protected buildings in the UK, and it was quite an interesting thing to work on, because obviously it's a complete different experience. In you can't drill into the walls, you can't lean your brush against the wall and stuff like that. So you've got to make sure your work blends in. I think that was something like, it's really different and something to learn on, because there's all these specialist people I got to meet, like this stonemason that's travelled all over the world for the last 40 years doing things like that.
Yeah, cool, fantastic. And one of the other areas, you're still learning the trade, kind of on the job, which is a really great way of doing that. And that's the great thing about apprenticeships. How much support do you get? Do you feel you get? How's the support you've received since you decided to take this path?
It's been mixed, definitely. I think from my college it's been quite good. As in, if I've ever had any problems, they've tried their best to support me, and so is my boss. But sometimes you do get the odd people, because I'm a young girl going into a trade. Some people in their like long careers, they've been doing plumbing for like ever since they left school, and they're now at the point of retiring, and they've never worked with a girl. And I think they found it very hard. Like when I said, "Oh, I'm struggling with this, so I need help with this," it was quite hard at first to remove that stigma, because it was just because you're a girl, like, come on, like you need to toughen up a bit and things like that. But actually now I get along with a lot more people, because they realise that you put the effort in and that you aren't any different. But I think that was the hardest thing, and I think I struggled a lot in my first year, was trying and remove that stigma around people who I work with.
And do you think that's, I mean, you sort of referenced it there, and so I might be asking you might already say it again, but is that generational, do you think? Has that predominantly been a generational thing in terms of those observations from people?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think it is in the older generations that some of them have found it harder, but then you also get it in the younger ones, because they have that expectation of they're going into a trade where there isn't women, so don't have to deal with that. Even if I don't feel like it's any different, it's always a shock when I walk on site, and you always see those people's faces, and like then you usually get it with the older people who will tell you that they don't agree with it, and then you'll get some of the younger blokes who just won't talk to you. They'll just not even acknowledge that you're there.
Oh, really? And that still happens? And did you, I'd like to drill into that in a bit more detail in a minute, but the support you got at college, you talked, that sounded like it was pretty positive. Did that whole sort of school experience and then going into the apprenticeship, did you feel you had a level of support and encouragement in that process?
So during school, really, I didn't have much support, because I'm really bad dyslexia, so I struggled to read and do numbers anyway, and I did struggle throughout the whole of school with people not understanding that. And actually, you do realise that, like my tutor, for example, he's been doing it for like 10 years now, and he's learned to understand. And actually, it's helped with my learning, because I'm doing something practical, and for me, seeing how stuff works it's then helped me. Like when I first started, my whole arm would be covered in numbers and whatever of me trying to add up because I had nowhere to write it, and
Right.
got to the point now where I'm starting to be able to do it in my head and stuff like that. And the college have been quite good in, like, even in my exams, they'll give me a bit of extra revision time, or like they'll sit there and help me read through. So it's going from school to a college, I think you get treated a lot better, as in, like at school you always had that little battle with your teachers that you'd be bickering with them and arguing, but at college I feel like they kind of respect you a bit more, and you then have a better experience, really.
And probably because at that point you've picked what you want to really be focused on, and that's what you engage with, whereas at school you're sort of doing general topics which may not have a relevance to what you want to end up doing. So yeah, I get that. And then sort of dig in, you've started the sort of down this path in the conversation, but one of the questions I was going to ask is, how have you found it as a woman in the trades? Has it been different? Sounds like it has still been. Do you want to maybe talk to some of that experience and how you've handled that?
Yeah, so when I first got taken on, I was the first female on the tools that my company's taken on. And I think it was a bit of a shock for them, because throughout the first year I did really struggle because I was scared to speak up to myself. And you get those normal comments of like, you shouldn't really be doing this, you should be at home doing what, like cleaning and looking after people, and like, oh, what are you going to do when you get pregnant? No one's going to want to employ you, and stuff like that. It was never off my boss, it would be off people I'd worked with around me. And it was something I did struggle with, because I was like, I didn't find it any different. I didn't find that I was anything special in a way. But for them, obviously, this is something that not many companies around me even have girls. And like, even in situations like in the workplaces, like I worked in the fire station one time and I was working in the toilets, and the guy refused to not use the toilets while I was working in there. So proceeded to use them while I was working.
Oh, he refused to not use. Sorry, he. Wow.
Oh, so he carried on using the urinal while I was working in there, and just told me not to look, really, and things like that. People just don't expect it, and it's. And
that's a co-worker.
No, this wasn't a co-worker. This was actually a fireman.
Oh, it's a fireman site, right? Okay, yeah.
But yeah, I think it was one of those things that I struggled with, but I found that a lot more, if I speak up for myself, people are then a bit taken back and are like, oh, she is going to say something if we say something to her. And you find if you pretend to feel confident and like kind of walk around site with your head up rather than like looking at the floor, people tend to won't mess with you as much.
Yeah, so it's obviously, that's disappointing to hear that that's still going on, and sort of to the extent that it's going on. And do you think it will? I mean, it sounds like you're saying it's reflective of the fact there are very few women in the companies around where you are. Is that one of the drivers of this?
Yeah, so I'm like quite like where I live. There's the main city, but the rest of it's all countryside. So it's people that have lived there all their life, all their family have lived there. So it's always like, it's not a very like, whereas in the main cities in the UK, like London, Manchester, there's a lot of more females.
Yeah.
And I know they still struggle, but because there's more of them, they can kind of relate to each other, and people are like, oh yeah, like I have seen a girl before. And yeah, definitely.
And does the company support you? Is this conversation you've had with your boss at all? And you don't have to get into that into too much detail, because obviously I know you're still working there, but do you feel you get support from that when those things are happening from other people on the site?
Yeah, definitely. I think my boss and his wife have been so helpful. Like, I remember sometime last year, I actually wanted to quit because I was struggling with people just staring at me and making comments on how I looked and the fact that I was a girl. Like, they sexualized what I did for work. And It still happens now, but I think I really struggled with it. And I did call up my boss, and he was on site half an hour later to talk to me and help sort it out.
Yeah, that's terrible. 2022, and people are still making those comments on the site. It's crazy. Hopefully maybe some of them will listen to this and they might reflect on their behaviour.
Definitely. I think.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think people don't realise stuff like this still happens because portrayed through social media and like online, and like how many like days we have now to help promote trades and women and like equality, but actually behind closed doors that still happens, even if it's not directly in the public light.
Well, yeah, and it's a workplace. I just think to be working on a job with a colleague and treat them like that is pretty abysmal, you know, in this day and age. And do you think, are there things happening that you see that are helping change that? I mean, how do you feel about your, and, you know, secondary question to that? We'll answer the first question. Like, do you think it's changing at all?
I do definitely. Like, I think because like where I live, I am the only one now that people tend to treat you a bit better because they know of you and they know that like I have that support around me now, that people now actually give me a chance, because I think I was kind of written off from the moment I walked on site by a lot of people, but now actually I'm starting to get given the chance to show what I can do and like prove to them that I'm not much different and I am still there ready to learn.
Yeah, but the hard bit is just, you know, that painful experience you have to go through to get to that point is, you know, would naturally put, you know, I'm not sure I'd want to stick something out if I was getting, you know, spoken to in that way by colleagues for a period of time. Right, there's a point where I might just pull the pin on that and be like, this is
I think that's one thing through. I think that's one thing through the trades, because obviously if things are like that said in different settings, like if you're in an office or like, I think the trades are quite far behind in how they deal with stuff like that, because obviously you'd have human resources and whatever if in kind of larger companies and that, but in trades it just hasn't been, it's still something that they haven't really got to grips with, which I think they are getting better at, but they're kind of like 5 years behind everybody else.
Yeah, and then there's some of those smaller companies that don't have that resource and attention. And when you've broached this, I think now you sort of talked about how you've been had to be more confident and speak to people about this stuff. And does anyone ever reflect and sort of come back to you and apologize or sort of change their behavior? Does that happen?
Yeah, definitely. I think like once someone actually has a word and they go, oh, like actually did upset her, because I might, a lot of the time I just tend to play it off and I'll be like, I'm just going to walk off and like, I'm just not going to say anything, because I don't always have the confidence in that time to say something. I'll sit there 10 minutes later kicking myself going, oh, I should have said something.
Yeah.
But when I like go back and people actually realize that did upset me, you then do get people treat you a lot better. Like I remember when I first started, somebody was like, oh, it's just wrong, you should be like my wife, ironing at home, whatever. And like when they realized that I actually get upset with comments like that, and then when they realize what you can do, a lot of people kind of backtrack, and now that person, like they're one of my favorite people to work with now, and it's stuff like that.
Yeah. Great. It's good to hear that it's actually there has some sort of shift. And, you know, one of the things I want to talk to, and you've got it there on the hoodie, you know, you've got an Instagram profile, you know, you talk about this stuff. Does that help? It feels like there's a good movement sort of across social media for trades in general, actually, but also women in trades that are sort of telling their stories and trying to inspire other women to get into the business. Do you want to talk through kind of how you approach that?
Yeah, definitely. Like I kind of started my Instagram more to find that support, because I don't have those people really to relate to around me. And I've met some of the most loveliest girls and guys on there really that are there willing to support me, and actually finding companies are trying to encourage stuff like this. And I kind of do the page. It helps give me the confidence to then be able to speak up about trades, because it's easier behind the camera. You don't have to see the people. And it's quite nice when you end up hearing at the end of the day that people are interested in what you're doing. And then like the other day I got my first message saying like, oh, after seeing this I really want to give it a go, like how do you get into apprenticeships? And that was something I was like, that was my goal really, is to just show people that it's not much different. And I kind of just have a laugh and a joke about it really.
Yeah, good. Well, it's good. And it seems like you're getting a following and other people engaged. And do you think things will change at a school level? You know, one of the issues obviously trying to encourage more people, and obviously a lot of this starts with schooling and even parents encouraging people to pick a trade. Do you think that will change, or are there things that need to happen to change that?
That is definitely stuff that needs to happen, because even if the kids wanted it, sometimes parents will talk kids out. Thankfully my parents are really supportive of it, but we are doing stuff like, even if it's small, like there's a writer in the UK at the moment that she's written children's books for kids like age 5+ about a girl that drives a digger and stuff like that. So we're trying to get it into kids' heads from a younger age that this is fine, this is an option, it's normal. And like even today I did my first event in the school where we went round and the kid the kids had to guess our job, and this was like 11-year-olds, so
Yeah.
they just started their high school journey, and then you actually find out when they find you online, and they message you later on saying, "Oh, I really enjoyed it. Like, I want to do this now." And it's something that I think until they see stuff like that, you don't realise. And I never really realised until I had that course at my school, really.
And it was the course, just doing that practical course and being hands-on in those construction areas. That's what really encouraged you to think, actually, this is much more suited to the things you like doing versus doing something academic.
Yeah, and also I got to, my parents, they renovated our house that we live in around just before I started that course as well. So that kind of made me pick the course, because I got to have a go at everything in my own house, and the fact that you then get to live in it afterwards, and it's like, I really enjoyed it. And I think that was something that I found quite rewarding, is I got to see my work be practical.
Yeah, fantastic. Great. And then, you're going to keep obviously being a spokesperson for women in trades. That's good to see. And do you follow other sort of high profile people that are speaking, or do you connect with? It seems like there's quite a good community, even on a global basis, of people trying to encourage more women into the trades.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think especially recently, I've managed to keep in contact with quite a few girls, like even in the main cities in the UK, and even a couple in like America, Australia, New Zealand, and things like that. And it's just quite nice to hear that other girls have that same experience, and it kind of builds yourself up, because you're like, there is other people there is other people actually doing it. Because sometimes you feel like you're at a bit of a dead end when it's like no one really wants to listen, or they just don't think that the job's suitable. But there's so many different areas in construction, like not just plumbing. You could be a digger driver, you could be a site manager, a surveyor, anything really.
Yeah, cool, fantastic. Well, look, this is a great conversation, and I do hope that people that are watching and listening, if they've ever made those comments or are making those comments, maybe they hopefully do reflect on their behaviour and speak to their colleague and sort of change things a bit faster than they. Still surprising to hear some of what you're saying in this day and age. So appreciate it, and congrats on the apprenticeship, and hope it keeps going really well. And we've got, we always finish on a few questions, and I'm quite interested actually in your answer to the first one. But if you were going to pick another trade, you sort of said you ended up in plumbing because they got back to you. But if you were going to pick another trade, what would it be?
I think I really want to now. I've got an urge. I really want to drive a digger. I go around site and I'm like begging the people, like, "Oh, can I have a go one day?" And I think that's like a little dream that you see from watching telly when you're younger, of like seeing all the people drive them all. And I've still now, I'm like, that's one thing I still really want to try.
That's next. Yeah, cool. And then, well, our next question is about your work vehicle. If you had an unlimited budget, but it sounds like you'd say a digger, but it'd just be interested, if you did have an unlimited budget, what work vehicle would you purchase?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like it would. I'd end up driving a digger to work or something.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Bucket at the front.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
Yeah. If not, I really want a truck. An open back truck, I think that'd be really awesome.
Yeah, cool. And then, what's your favourite plumbing job? You talked about you're doing mainly commercial work, but are there things that you enjoy more than others?
I sometimes really love doing like things that come with the job, like tiling and things like the little extra finishes on the job that you see, like sometimes in just houses and stuff, how like your little bits can make a difference. But I think the main thing I do enjoy is doing the massive boiler houses, because you feel a lot of pride when you've knocked apart like a massive steel boiler, and then you put in these nice new slick ones and the nice shiny pipework and everything. Yeah,
cool. And there's any sort of funny stories? I mean, you're still early in your career, but anything funny that's happened to you?
Oh, I'm trying to think now. There's this everyday banter really is quite funny. Like, I think the other day I've been trying to start a video now where I think I've got people juggling random objects on site, and the joy that you see of guys having a competition of just juggling about. But I think there's been a lot of funny things that have really happened. I have got a picture of it, but I worked in trenches for the first time, and I was absolutely covered head to toe in mud. And I think I was a laughing stock to the whole building site, because I got the most muddiest, and no one expected it really.
In the trenches, wow. And last couple of questions. the last question really is, any pet peeves on site, apart from the obvious ones you've already shared, but anything that, some people like a site to be really clean and tidy. Is anything like that with you?
Yeah, I'm definitely like that. Even if my bedroom at home doesn't show that I like to be clean and tidy, I think that's definitely on site, is when I see that the microwave's dirty, or the kettle, or even the toilets, because a lot of the time I have to share toilets with men. Sometimes it can be absolutely disgusting, because you're like, can you not just clean up after yourselves, please?
Yes,
yeah,
I sympathise. Yeah, no, it's interesting because different tradespeople, some people have really, I think it's a great skill set to have. I'm trying to think, we had, I think it was PB Plumber talked about leaving his site very clean. I want to say, he may correct me, but and we had a few other people, and it's a really important thing. I think, especially when you go into residential houses, it's a good thing to be focused on. Cool, great.
Yeah.
And then sort of last question, you talked about the network that you're involved with across sort of social and your Instagram. Anyone you think we should speak to next, who you come across who's really interested and has an interesting perspective on the trades?
Yeah, definitely. As a girl, she's actually just recently hit 10K on Instagram followers, Els Electrics. And she's actually she's an electrician who does mainly train lines and stuff. And I think that's really interesting, because she's recently become like the apprentice spokesperson at a company. And you see her doing a lot of things for other women. And like, I love like following her Instagram. It's great.
Cool. Great. Thank you. Fantastic. So this has been a really, really cool conversation. I really appreciate you giving up the time to speak to us. And I sort of appreciate your perseverance, to be honest, to stick with it. I think it sounds like it was pretty tough conditions coming in, which is a real shame, but I think it's admirable that you decided to stick with it, and I hope it all keeps going well, and best of luck with it. It's great to see.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah,
and
that's definitely the goal, is just to show people that we can do it. And if you want to drive a digger, let's do it.
Yeah, I hope you'll be doing that one day. Keep us posted.
Definitely, I think that would be a big mark in my career.
Yeah, driving the digger. Fantastic. All right, cool. Thanks, Sophie. And for all of our other listeners and watchers, as always, if you could give us the thumbs up, rate, review us across the chosen platform, and also provide any comments if there are things you'd like to see more of, less of, and also if you'd like to be on the show, hit us up an email address in the link. And until next time, thanks very much. Thanks, Sophie. See you all soon.
Yeah, see ya. Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of this episode. Behind the Tools is brought to you by Tradify, job management software for your trade business. If you enjoyed the podcast, let us know by leaving a review, and be sure to tell your mates about it. Email behindthetools@tradifyhq.com if you or someone you know would be keen to join the show as a guest.